So welcome to the Node.js Node API team meeting for January 13th. Great Friday, the 13th, 2023. Before we get started, does anybody have any announcements they'd like to share? The Node.js Node API team meeting for...
Yeah, I have. Today we released a new version of the Node.js API, the 5.1.0. This new release fixes memory leak in async progress worker base. Added some new API, and we made the cleanup book public, and removed the unknown array type, because by default we now use the unsigned 8 array type, and for the typed array, and then we added a lot of tests, and made some update on the documentation. So yeah, this is what is in this new release.
Great. Yeah, thanks for doing that. And thanks, Jack, for all the testing, and everybody else for all the new stuff that's in there. Great news. Okay. Any other announcements? Okay, if not, I will share my screen. Get to the milestones. Here we go. Okay, so first one at the top today. I don't know how this ordering always ends up, but anyway, Jack, anything we should discuss on the full coverage side of things?
Nope. I just have a few PRs up. I think like it'd be great if somebody take a look at them again. But yeah, I'm making some good progress towards wrapping up the rest of those tickets. I think I just have like 3 or 4 left in terms of yeah, should be able to get that done this month, hopefully.
Excellent. Yeah, thanks for that. You got definitely, as I think Kevin mentioned last time, you've been on fire. Lots of PRs, adding lots of tests. That's really great.
Thank you.
Okay, better coverage of Node API on YouTube. Do we have anything to talk about on this front? I think Kevin, you were working on the page, right?
Yes. I update. If you open the issue,
Yep.
There is a linked PR to yep, that one, which is adding that small little documentation sentence. We already talked about the Node API resource on that doc page, so I figured it would be a good place to put that there. And I just said additional media resources can be found there, and it links to that page.
Yeah, no, I think that's the perfect place to add them, since we were already talking about some extra resources and stuff. So yeah.
And then that's it.
Okay. Great. Let me go back to here then. Adding list of non-C languages bindings to Node.js. I know. Go ahead.
I have to add the documentation on Node core.
Okay.
So for all this time, I try to do this this week.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, no rush. Just thanks for working on it. Tracking issues. Okay, let's just tracking area. Okay, sure. Tracking issues. I don't think there's anything new there.
Should we close this issue or something? Because it also in the title says October 2021, which
yeah, okay, that's right. So
maybe
closing, it's no longer 2021.
Yeah.
I guess the question then is, should we open a new one, right? You know, is
Is
it active enough that we want to keep track of that, or we? I don't know what people think.
I don't really think it's that useful. I don't know.
I'd be happy to say like we don't open a new one, but still in the meeting, if people could share
Yeah,
when
like in
something new
the
happens.
announcements type time.
Yeah,
I think that's
okay.
worth.
that good for people, or
It would be definitely nice to kind of speak about news around Node API areas, what's going on, different type of users and stuff, and ideally after that we should put them somewhere in docs, so technically other people be able to find all these interesting scenarios where Node API succeeds and used.
it is that's a very good point. So the question is like, how do we do that without too much overhead or process? Or we could create an issue which is just like news this week, and we could talk about that, and in the meeting paste in a comment, and people could also paste comments like async in that. So I mean, that's one way of it. That's probably the lowest cost way, and if we wanted to summarize that somewhere in like in the repo or something, we could do that periodically or something. I don't know what people think on that front.
I like it because if it's issues, pretty much many people, even outside of org, can comment on it, and just if they did something cool, that they'll be kind of, we should encourage them to just post on this issue, and at some point we kind of land this note somewhere else.
Okay, so what's new in Node API and Node add-on API? What's new? What's a good title? So what's new in?
Should we add Node API, Node add-on API world? So people feel like it's not only about API, but pretty much community. I don't know.
That sound good? So what's new in the Node API and Node add-on API world? Is that what you suggested?
Right.
Feel free to post new that you have so that we can share with the broader. Like that.
Yeah, the second sentence we'll discuss, like just small typo.
We'll discuss. Yep. My inbuilt autocorrect doesn't. So. Does that all look good? Sorry, go ahead.
This is specific for 2023, or we will use this issue forever. So
Maybe we'll say 2023 version.
yeah, okay, yeah.
It may get too long. It's probably good to like close it out every so often, but yeah. Yeah, I think that's good. And we should try and like, we could say, you know, should we post in here that like there's new Node API version published, right? New Node API version published.
Say
What's
the
the version number?
No, today, yeah, 13.
Actually, it's Node add-on.
Yeah, no,
Right.
yeah.
Which version was it? It was
5.1.0.
okay. And even I'm gonna like, is there a, there's a change log, right? Yeah, you've got that in
Yeah,
your.
and
Let me just- I think this is the link.
okay, I will find.
That, I think that's it, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So yeah, I know that's good, and we can post. I think that's actually I think this could really turn out well, because like we could even try and point some other people who might be interested in sharing news to it, right? Like here we're capturing some announcements and people can post stuff, and you know, maybe we can even forward it once we get going to like places like Node Weekly or something, like, hey, if you want to know what's new, here's a place you could go take a look. And
Sounds great.
okay, let me tag that with our forever lasting milestone. Okay. Right. No, that's good. Any other announcements or anything? I guess no. Sorry, we're on to that. We did this one. So this is where I'm not quite sure how the am I on milestone 11, right? Okay. I think the order's changed, but anyway, doesn't matter. Get contacts for each of the runtime supporting Node API. I think we just have that as something we'd like to do. I don't know if we've done anything there yet, right? No. Okay. Document how to check for memory leaks. I think that's kind of the same thing. It's on our list of things we'd like to do, just haven't made any progress. Adding the list of non-C language bindings to Node.js doc. I think we already covered that, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Better coverage recovered, drive full coverage covered. This one.
I don't think you closed it. I think you just made a comment.
Yeah, okay. I often sometimes do that. There we go. Good.
Mhm.
Okay. The debug for testing for add-ons, I haven't done anything on, and stale issues. Okay, so stale issues. We'll see if there's anything new there. So no new ones. Anybody
This
knows the
one I
context
took a
on these?
look
Just
at
go ahead.
again. There was some discussion of running it with sanitizers. So I build Node and the module, the add-on itself with the sanitizer, but then I realized that, and then I ran it and I didn't see anything. And then I realized that it also uses an additional native library that I would have had to also compile with sanitizer. And I didn't do that, but then I just looked at the repository for this this package, and there were some updates, and I'm no longer able to reproduce the issue. Whereas before, I was able to reproduce the issue on every individual run that I made. So what I did was I added this large memory. Oh,
Okay. I guess
the
it's
code that
commented out.
triggers it is commented out. Okay, well then, back to the drawing board. Okay, I will take another look. I'll have to now run or compile the that additional native library that they're using with the sanitizer build and see if I can find anything then.
Okay, sounds good. Okay. Thanks for investigating that one. Somehow I got ourselves out of here. Okay. Okay.
That one's regarding the runtime changes.
Right. This one.
And then that one also runtime
Yep.
changes.
Yep.
Can we open this one?
Yep. Opening it up. See what the last comment is.
Ah, yes,
Right,
that
it's the
was regarding the
documentation.
shutdown order, and we discussed
Okay.
that last week. Is there anything that we need to do regarding the runtime changes stuff that we've like posted? Because I know we made an issue in core to collect feedback. Is there anything that we need to take action on regarding that as of now?
Vladimir has a open PR for it, and I believe we'll still continue to push the PR forward. And I posted several comments on the PR, and we'll wait. If Vladimir has time to work on it, it will be great.
I guess, did we get feedback from the runtimes? The other runtimes would be the other thing.
Can we try looking at that issue?
Yes.
Let me see. And
GitHub.
core.
Label, right. And of course, it doesn't like the Canadian label spelling. This one, right?
Yes, that one. See if there's been any additional conversation on it.
Right. So I think we have some comment that, like, say from Russ, that wouldn't make a huge difference. I guess the question is, like, do we think we need any input from, like, say, the Bun or Dino teams who also implement Node API?
Yeah, that's a great point. I haven't have in touch with these runtimes, but I I will reach out to the let's say Nabil API RS module owners, which is Brooklyn, who
Yep.
commented about. And so I believe the next step for reaching out will be, like, say, have a open a issue to Dino and Bum and have their feedbacks on Node API runtime semantics.
Right. I wonder if, I don't know if the Winter CG is the right place to ask, but maybe you're right. Like, an issue on those two repos is the most direct thing. I was just thinking, like, they may also be in here, like these runtime keys list. I was supposed to list the different.
And the
Right.
runtime keys repository is acting like a registry for any JavaScript runtime.
Right.
They didn't. This runtimes are not declared to be compliant with
Yep.
any Windows CG
Yep.
specification. So, and the scope of the Windows CG is currently limited to web APIs. I'm not sure if they would like to, like, include native APIs in their scope. But yeah, that would be great to ask. Maybe I can reach out to James, since he's the chair of the group.
Yeah, I was thinking, but looking at it, I think, like, an issue, if you did an issue to Bun and Dino, that covers the ones we're aware of who are implementing it, in addition to, like Vladimir, I know you represent one of them. And so if we had those two people commenting, the other thing is, we now have the list. Do we have the list of, I guess, Nikolai, you're working on that list of and I think we have that in our node.js API stable node now, right? We have where did we put that list of
Yeah, in the file node API engine bindings.
Right here, okay.
Yeah.
So we've got some input from NappyRS. I don't know if any, I guess these are all Rust. Maybe we can figure that if one Rust one isn't affected. And I know, Nicola, you've worked on some of these others or looked at some of these others, so you might be able to give us some feedback on
Yeah, I worked on Go, essentially.
Right, okay. So you can cover, we can cover that one off.
I can cover C# bindings because
Okay.
NAPI-CS is not being actively supported, and with Jason, we're working together on NAPI.NET.
Okay, but you don't think that's going to be affected negatively by this proposal, right?
I hope not.
Okay, and then, so then it would be like these other three. I don't know if it makes any sense to try and like open an issue in their repos, basically saying.
What I saw is that the implementation in that is in Bool, it's one of it's came from Zig Napigen.
Okay.
So yeah, maybe we have we would have feedback from the Bool stuff.
Yep. And then, so that leaves the Swift and NIM ones, right? So maybe
also outdated a bit.
Yeah, you're right. It doesn't look like it's been updated for quite a few years.
Yeah.
So, and then this one again. Okay, so I think it's that I'm convinced that if we get some input from Dino and Bun teams that, hey, it doesn't seem to be an issue, we can basically say, yeah, we've done our due diligence, right, and we're good to go. Make sense to everybody?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
And there's also like, if we talk about this issue, the document itself, it's a bit different right now from the prototype I was working on.
Yeah, just
Because
finding
if you remember, like then we look on a code change. One of the discussion was like, do we even need to have this registration which uses this struct? Should
Right.
we use this only kind of function? And then as a part of this code, I introduced additional function which is supposed to return version. So I guess like what I'd be interested if we okay with this approach, and then we're asking feedback from the other team. Should we augment the document to pretty much reflect this vision, this new vision?
Right.
Or it's not something we want to do. I really want to get this consensus where we're going, and if we agree on it, like we need to update document.
Right. Right, and we wouldn't be removing the other option, right? It's just that we would be modifying our macros so that if you're using those macros, it would end up looking it up through the symbol, right?
Yes, yes.
And I guess like I'm thinking like, okay, what's the transition? Somebody builds something for Node 16, for example, that has the older way and uses the macros and then tries to run with a newer version of Node. Is that still all going to work?
It should, because technically macros get expanded into producing some specialized structures, and we do not remove node.js code to have this old way of initialization. So essentially, think like there are two different sides.
Yeah.
On one side, we have node.js, on the other side, we have modules. From
Yep.
node.js side, we continue to use both approaches through the symbol or through the struct.
Yep.
And it's only difference coming on the module side. What we say in any kind of previous module, regardless what they used to use, symbol or struct, they continue to work. But if somebody would effectively switch to new version of Node API, and this new version will use symbol only, it will continue to work.
Okay. And did the symbol, at what point did we add the symbol as an option, or was it always there?
It was actually added after the struct. Struct was a very original one.
Right.
And then I looked through the history. At some point, Gabriel has added this registration for symbol. And I think it was somehow aligned with thinking about using this module per context. I think in the end, even registration for struct was enabled through context. But I think like one of the justifications that time for the symbol was actually to make it useful per context.
I guess it's what version of Node was that added in? Because like it sounds like there was a version of Node which a module would no longer work for if we did this, right?
I can dig it and augment. I'll put it somewhere, this comment. Yes.
But I guess you would have to link. I'm just thinking out loud. In for that to be the case, you would have to compile your Node add-on module with a later version of Node, right?
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
And what I've seen, like I was mostly kind of playing with NAPI CS and with NAPI.NET. We're using the symbol initialization, and according to author of NAPI CS, at least in the comments what I read, he borrowed a lot of ideas from NAPI RS, like from Rust implementation. So I assume that Rust implementation uses symbol initialization as well. Right. I can verify it again too, but I think like many other language bindings, they chose, instead of using this pretty complex struct initialization, they chose to use symbol-based initialization of their modules.
Right.
In Go, I use export the symbol, and it's all I need to add the module. So yeah, it's very simple. Use the symbol.
Yeah, it seems to make sense. I think we should just grab that last piece of information, like what version of Node would not have the symbol support in it. I suspect that's quite a while back, right? But if it's one of our actively supported ones, that might be a bit of information to understand.
Okay, I'll dig it up and.
Okay.
Yeah, but maybe we need to know if all actual LTS support this initialization. But I think yes. If I will remember, this happened in Node 11 or 12. But we should verify if it's problem.
Sounds
I think
good.
it happened either 2018 or 2019. I can't. It was definitely before 2020.
Right.
Long time ago.
Yeah. So if it happened in like all the LTS ones, and also if you continued to build with one of those older Node versions, we're not breaking anything. Like you could still run the thing with a newer Node. But yeah, okay. Let's grab that piece of info, and that as long as it's far enough back, that's not a concern either.
Okay.
But yeah, I guess the documentation is like, we're not removing the ability to use the symbol, but we are, or the structure, we're just saying it's not the preferred way of doing it anymore, right? Like we don't use it anymore.
Yeah, we will repurpose our markers not to use struct anymore. So somebody would need to use, effectively not this public struct. We still whatever like underscore X. You could vote for that probably very explicitly if you like.
Right.
But kind of major kind of markers which we recommend for people to use, I think are two of them. They'll be always using symbol instead.
Right. Okay. Yeah, no, that makes sense. And maybe another paragraph just in the doc explaining that might be effectively we're kind of like on a step maybe to deprecating it, but for now it's still supported. It's just we won't be using it ourselves anymore.
Actually, I did a quick search in the document that I found that we didn't say any words about the registration method in the Node API documentation, whilst
Okay.
the Node C++ API has documented how to define their entry point. So I believe we probably need to document about these two methods, these two registration methods for Node add-on, Node API add-on.
Well, except that we're not, like, maybe what you're saying is we never actually expose them, right? Like we provided macros and it was like, here's how you define it with the macros. That's our API. And then, although, yeah, like use these macros and you get it. Like we may not have actually exposed the structure itself.
Yeah, but the macro is not documented too. So that's the point I was saying. You know, currently we only have examples how to define Node add-on, Node API add-ons, but in the documentation there is no words about how to define the entry point.
Yeah, that would be good to add. Like, but it might be you can use these macros or you can export the symbol.
Yeah, exactly. That that would also allow to reduce the confusion in the future, since that we have two methods of registering the add-on.
Right. And the macros will end up, if we make this change, just being a simpler way of exporting the symbol, really.
Yeah, that could work, but I'm not sure if it's no, I yeah, probably need to I'm just not sure about how would that be valuable.
I think it's in terms of like having one way to do it, it simplifies and reduces the chance of, like, you know, right today we could possibly add a feature that you do it one way that doesn't work in the other way, which is, I think, maybe how we started this, right? It's like there's two ways to do it. We're doing the same thing, but we got to make sure that they both keep working and they both offer whatever features we want to offer, right? Because I think we were thinking like, well, I think we were like, we started thinking about this because like we were talking about like, hey, we could change the macro to have this extra field. And it was like, well, wait a second, that's not going to work if you export the symbol, right? So I think there's some value in like consolidating into doing it one way from that perspective.
Yeah, exactly. What I was thinking about the priority of, let's say, if you define both of these entry points with macro and the magic symbol, and actually currently the macro would take precedent over the magic symbol, since the macro would register itself with the C constructor of the it will register itself when the library is being opened by DL open. When I reviewing I was reviewing Vladimir's PR. I was also thinking about the priority between the new symbol and the version defined in the data structure. So since currently we already have this divergence between the magic symbols and the data structure part. So I was thinking that this probably be fine for Vladimir's PR to follow current pattern. But it would be great if we can remove this confusion between two methods to do the same thing.
Okay, so it sounds like we have next steps on that one.
So, Chenjong, could you clarify? So I didn't catch it. So what's your proposal? Like, so we should not mix with two different things in one PR? Or...
No, I think your PR is great since it follows current pattern, and I didn't propose any change to the current PR. I was thinking that the next step for us is to consider how to unify those two approaches, like mentioned by Michael, and to reduce the confusion for people. Like, say, we have two methods to do the same thing and they behave differently, and
Okay. But this what we already have in PR. I think we're only missing documentation from what I heard.
Yeah, that probably helps. Yeah, to explain.
Okay. So let me work on documentation. I'll dig up whenever this new symbol-based initialization was introduced, and I'll try to write as much documentation as possible, kind of changing our current docs and also augmenting some PR description. And let's go from there.
Sounds good.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so we kind of flip back to that one. So let me go back to, we have a couple that are waiting on that one. I think this one we talked about, I think, and then so there's this one.
No progress.
Yeah. Okay, so no problem. Not exactly super burning priority. So the next thing is we can look at issues in the repo itself. So no add-on API. Pull requests, as we were talking earlier, lots of additions to the testing for the tests. That there is one, I think, on that one. Is Jack still here?
It seems like he's disconnected.
Okay.
Yeah, he had to leave for a work meeting.
Okay, because yeah, I do have a slight concern in that, like, if our handle scope wrapper doesn't work so that you can have nested scopes, then we may actually have a problem that we need to fix here, right? Like, if you have to drop down into the native code, that's not we'll have to figure out why that's not working. And we kind of adopted this model from V8, so I wonder how they've handled that. Like, it's, you should be able to say, like, here's my scope, and then here's my subscope, and then they, you know, but they're objects, so that when the objects go out of scope, they clean themselves up, right?
Right.
And I guess maybe what we're seeing is there's no guarantee that they occur in the same order that you created them. Which I have to go think about, maybe go read the spec or something, because I think that would cause lots of problems for people.
Right.
Or maybe it's that they are going out of scope. This scope 2 goes out of scope first. So let's see. Right, okay, so it tries to close the scope. Scope 1 goes out of, right, okay. So what's happening in the order that I'd expect is that your scope 2 goes out of scope first, gets cleaned up, and then scope 1, right, is because scope 1 is trying to do cleanup.
Does it make sense that he's creating, just looking at the code a little bit, he's creating two scopes in the same like C++ scope? Does it need to be in a different block so that when like the inner block
Right.
finishes, then the inner block's handle scope would be destructed, and then the function's handle scope would then be destructed.
Right. That's the way you would, yeah, I don't think there's any reason to have two scopes in the same C++ scope. So that is a good
Right.
point. I still wonder though, so when scope 1 goes out of scope, it tries to call close handed. So when scope 2 goes out of scope,
Wait,
closing the
what
reference.
code says like we pretty much using the same handle in two different, I mean, the same node API handle in two different C++ node API handle scopes, which should be no, we should prohibit it.
Well, I think like if we're, one thing to look at is like if we're actually deleting the scope that was passed in the second scope, we shouldn't be doing that. Right? Like scope 2 shouldn't clean up scope 1. So maybe like, anyway, we can take a look at that, but like scope 1 shouldn't clean up, scope 2 should not clean up scope 1, which maybe would fix it. So I think you make a good point, Kevin, that like you shouldn't normally do this, but I think also it shouldn't be a problem, right? Because just because you created and destroyed one scope doesn't mean the other scope, even if it was passed in, should be gone. Because I could create two escapable handle scopes. And in fact, I guess if we did what you suggested, I don't think it would fix the problem if it is this problem that scope 2 is cleaning up scope 1. Anyway, I think we can go back to the issues, but my one point on these is like, I don't think we want to have the tests not use our, like, we're probably working around a problem we should fix versus working around it.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
Okay. And it sounds like people are not, if you see some flaw to that logic, let me know, but it sounds like that's kind of sounding reasonable to people, so. Otherwise, this one, I think this one was ready to land, was it? Yeah, I don't think there was. Okay.
Unless anybody else wants to take a look, but I think it's okay.
Okay. I had a feeling like maybe I was waiting a little longer to give somebody else time to look at it, but otherwise, we'll consider that one ready to go. These ones, I think, Kevin, you were going to take a look at since they're thread safe related. So I
Okay.
just won't land them until you've got a chance to do that. So I think we've got that good from pull requests. In terms of issues, full scope to the documentation.
I did see this issue, but I didn't really know how to respond to it.
Okay, so anyway,
it's creating a handle scope inside the on OK of a async worker.
Right, so I'd have to go back and look at the code. Like if this is, there's places where you need to have a scope running, right? Although I think that we might have added a scope if you really needed one there, so.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, we guess we need to go back and take a look. This one I think we already talked about, so I think those are the only things which are quite new. Okay, so that's just, we have time to help. Let's look at node. Sorry, go ahead.
I believe I would like to talk about the 1246.
The inconsistent return value.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Go for it.
I took a look on this issue, and I commented that when we introduce, maybe we marked all methods that may call into JavaScript to return maybe type. Whilst other methods that are not expected to call into JavaScript, like number value getters mentioned in the issue, they are not marked as returning, maybe intentionally. The problem here is that when we cast a node API value to node API number with the node add-on API dot s, and like the code example in the issue, we didn't enforce the type check, like say, to check if the cost value is actually a number. And in the node core, it will validate if the value if it's actually a number, and if it's not, it will return a like say MPI number expected. And in the node add-on API, it would throw if the returning MPI stated is not MPI okay. So I believe the issue here is that maybe we can introduce a macro or a new method to enforce the type cost, and as the API value as the method is documented as, like say, it is supposed to that the developer know the value is actually the type expected rather than a unknown value. If the costed value is unknown value, developer should explicitly check the value before casting it to the type they want. And if we introduce new method or introduce a new macro to enforce the type cost, it would help to avoid such invariance in the subsequent calls to encounter type mismatching with the
So which
to
do you
avoid the
think,
type.
which do you prefer as a solution?
I was thinking the solution that introducing new macro would allow developers to simply define the macro and check their existing add-on if they are casting values to wrong type without any code changes.
So if you define
with
that, sorry, go ahead.
With the new method, it would need additional code changes in developers code base, and but there would be no, and yeah, there would be no any semantic changes on the existing method.
So if we had this define NAPI enable type check, that would mean that it would return a maybe if you've defined that, and it would return what it currently does.
I was experimenting with the code that if you define this method, define this not enable type check, the program would abort when the type mismatches, since it can be used in, like say, in debug build or in a testing build.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the documentation would be if you should make sure make sure you know it's that type beforehand, right?
And since type check in Node add-on API would require additional API calls, and it comes with a performance degradation.
Yep.
Although the degradation might not be significant, but yeah, it will require additional API calls.
Okay. And it also means that like we never intended to do a conversion, right?
Yeah, it's explicitly documented in the API value as method. And the documentation, you can would you mind open the link in the doc?
Yeah,
in
sure.
the comment?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can see the document already said that the actual type should be known or assumed.
Right.
It is not suitable for unknown values.
Right. Okay. So basically we've said we're going to throw a type error, which we do, but there's a case where it tries to coerce instead and it could pass even though it shouldn't.
Yeah, the problem is that we currently we don't provide any ahead of time checks for so that they can know where the typecast is wrong.
Right. Instead of aborting, would it make, and just top of my head, would it make any sense that like if you define that, then it does the type check and gives you a nappy error instead of aborting?
For when the C++ exception is enabled, that would be possible.
Yeah.
But if the C++ exception is not enabled, we don't have any ways to reflect the mismatch. Since,
Right. Okay.
yeah. So the abort would be most promising for add-ons that didn't enable exceptions and
Okay.
for them to test the mismatch.
Right. Okay, that sounds good to me. So basically there'd be we document, here's an extra define you can use for debugging, and it will enforce that you can't actually, do this conversion.
I just
Yeah,
suggest a bit different name for the macro. It would be nice if we make it specific, not just type check, but say as type check. I don't know. So kind of the macro name would actually reflect method name it affects.
Yeah, I would actually think about it, but I was thinking that when you when you look at the macro only, then it seems like the name doesn't conform to the English grammar. I believe it looks like a bit weird.
That reads okay to me, like nappy enable as type check.
Yeah, well, I'm not a native English speaker, so I would defer this decision to you if you have any good suggestions.
mean,
Not
not be enable as
restricted
method
field.
type check or?
Hmm. I mean, I think it's okay. It just seems a little weird because, yeah, because it's like enable as type check instead
Right.
of enable the as type check. But I mean, as long as it's documented, I think it should be fine.
How about happy enable type check on as?
That does seem better. Maybe a little more verbose, but I think it's better.
Yeah, it looks better to me.
Okay.
It was good. My kind of main concern was actually make it focus, kind of scoped on this as method.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's perfect.
Okay.
Okay. I'm gonna pop back just because we're over. So we're at time. I guess I'll ask, is there any ones in core that we should specifically go to or defer till next time?
Yeah, I just want to say, like, I spent some time with discussing faster ways to create objects. There's not much progress there, but it was interesting discussion. I think in the past, Nicola had similar discussion, and this issue was automatically closed. Maybe it's worth to reopen it. But yeah, I hope like by next time to have a little bit more feedback on this topic.
Okay, sounds good. Any others people want to bring up?
I would just like to ask if there is anyone is working on 1257, since it's a
That's
very
here.
straightforward addition.
Oh yeah, I remember you had like there was a similar discussion about adding a method for this in core. And I remember that you had mentioned something like you did not want a core method to do this. So that's why I'm not sure if we want to add a node add-on API method, because usually what we do, we just wrap around the methods in core with, or like something that we may need to do to mimic the NAN implementations or whatever. So I don't know if this is in scope for the thought process of what Node add-on API does. But I'm open to discussion on that.
Yeah, we've had a few discussions on like, yeah, are we going to be a wrapper or add in some extra features? And this one, I don't know, it might be like a special case where like there's a problem that we're solving versus just, but I don't know.
Yeah, I was preferring the help function in Node add-on API, since we can already achieve this goal with existing Node API C interface. So since like Michael said, this is actually solving a problem, and I believe it will be helpful to include in the Node add-on API to avoid duplications in users' code.
Okay.
Yeah, like I know we don't want to just like any sort of helper methods, but like this one, I'm like, it seems to fall into the case where I'd say sure, right? Like it's a problem, people run into it. It's more than just like I'm making myself a little bit easier. It's maybe helping people follow a good pattern to start with.
Oh, I just thought that, Michael, you have a new definition in Node core headers that hides the symbols that can allocate external buffers. We can also facilitate that definition in Node add-on API to hide the method that can allocate external buffers.
Yeah, that's true too. Yeah. Good point.
Yeah,
Yeah. So no, yeah, I think that's a good extension. And that's like something where it's tied more closely to our implementation to do that. So I personally, I think this falls into the gray zone where like, yeah, it's you could do it without it, but I think it's probably worth adding. What does everybody else think? I see a nod or two. It sounds like Chenjiang, you agree?
yeah, I agree. This is a exception to the help function rules.
Okay.
And if there, I would like to say that if there is no one currently working on this, I can take a hand on this. Yeah.
Okay. So that sounds reasonable. Like we discussed the meeting today and we agreed it would make sense to add. Chenzong volunteered to put together a PR.
I have something real quick. The PR for on Node API headers that was approved both by Nick and Chengzong. So I mean, I guess it's ready to be merged unless someone else, like if you also want to take a look at it, Michael, that'd be great.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for the reminder. I'll take a quick look, but if I don't do anything by the end of today, just go ahead.
All right. That sounds good.
Okay.
Okay, that's all I have.
Okay, well, thanks everybody for taking the time. I'm going to stop sharing and just grab the link to the stream link. Thanks for everybody's time and all the hard work. We will see everybody next week.